Welcome to the Prime Real Estate Network channel on YouTube. I'm your host, Mr. Prime Real Estate, Ric Davis.
And I'm your host, the Texas Real Estate King, Larry W. Brooks.
Every week, the King and I will provide you exclusive access to our network of lenders, investors, and real estate professionals from both the commercial and residential real estate sectors.
Now, are you millionaire minded? Or maybe you're a millionaire in the making. Make sure that you subscribe so you can get connected to the network. And always remember, the Prime Real Estate Network, where millionaires are in the making.
Create wealth for generations.
What's up, Prime Real Estate Network listeners? It's your man, Larry W. Brooks, a.k.a. the Texas Real Estate King. Hey, when you get a moment, go ahead and go over to shoplwb.com. You can see the Pure Hustle merchandise that we had over there, some of our newer items that we have in stock, and of course, I got all the books that I've authored. I'd love for your support. You have a great day.
Good day. Welcome to the Prime Real Estate Network podcast. I'm your host, Ric Davis. If you don't follow me on social media, I invite you to do so at Prime Real Estate Ric. If you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in residential or commercial real estate anywhere in the great state of Texas, but especially here in our lovely city of Houston, you can reach me directly on Instagram at Prime Real Estate Ric. As always, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you this week, and we have a really exciting episode of the show planned for you all today. First things first, for those that's checking us out live on Facebook or YouTube, get involved in today's show. Leave myself or the Texas Real Estate King a relevant real estate question. Put it in the comments section, and you never know. We may very well have an opportunity to answer your question on today's episode. As always, I have a great time doing this show with my co-host, and I want to introduce him at this time. He is not only a highly successful real estate broker, he's a multi-time author, serial entrepreneur, the proud proprietor of the Pure Hustle clothing brand, and he's taking the commercial real estate market by storm. I'd like to introduce to the audience, as always, the Texas Real Estate King, Mr. Larry W. Brooks. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing wonderful, Rick. I'm taking it by storm. Although I need y'all I'm going through a hair day right now. Like, I missed my barber's appointment this morning. So, don't be judging my do off of what my do is going to look like in an hour from now. So I need to go ahead and address that.
Hey, man, we understand, man. Today's episode is one of the highlights of our production calendar, because today's episode is something that I feel that the city of Houston needs. We need to get this message out, because the organization that'll be represented on today's episode is doing some of the best work in the real estate industry anywhere in the world, but they are definitely serving all the great people here in the city of Houston. So, Mr. Brooks, could you share with our audience a little bit about how you were introduced to this week's guest and how you were able to get this fine professional to sit in this week on the Prime Real Estate Network?
Oh, no doubt, man. So, a large amount of what we do, I guess, comes from relationships. So us having an opportunity just to really build around them. So today's guest, I actually met her a few years back. We were doing, the city of Houston had something going on. I think she was in a different position at the time, but they had something going on where they were meeting, where we were all meeting. We were bringing in investors, people that were in the real estate community, talking about, I don't even know if it was land at the time, but we met. It was an event that took place. I want to say it was in Acres Home at that time. And just really an opportunity to just being able to watch her journey as she's added to the plaques on her wall, as I was just teasing about before going on to the show. But just being able to reach out to her, man. Recently saw her at the Houston Association of Realtors did a symposium for realtors. Again, I talked about it a little bit last week, where it talked about a down payment assistance, the availability of in the city of Houston, and how you go about trying to find ways to occupy it or get that as a part of your purchase vehicle. And so just having an opportunity, saw her and was able to reach out to her, and she made a commitment within hours and not weeks. So I do appreciate my friend being able to tune in, give us some good laughs as well as some great visions on the things that people can do when it comes to buying land. Because for those of you that don't know, buying land is a whole thing nowadays. That is a vehicle that I'm coming in contact with a lot of people talking about doing. I see people doing more sell on land than I've seen in years in the past.
And I agree with you totally, Larry. There's so many members of our audience that love to learn more about investing in the city of Houston. Well, today we're going to introduce you all to an organization that wants to invest in you the same way you want to invest in the city of Houston. So, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce this week's guest. This lady is not only the chief executive officer, but she's also the president of the Houston Land Bank. I want to thank her so much for carving some time out of her busy schedule to sit in. And I'd like to introduce to the Prime Real Estate Network audience, Miss Christa D. Stoneham. How you doing, ma'am? Now, just because Larry said you were going to bring the humor, you don't have to outdo yourself from the beginning. That was a good one. Thank you so much for sitting in with us, Christa. How have you been?
I've been great. Yeah, thank you so much for having me and for the warm introduction.
Larry,
hey, listen,
go ahead.
This is an exclusive, right? Because the last time the most of the world saw her, she had hair, it felt like it was going down her back. And we get her with the brand new look, man. We get the first shot at the brand new look. That's what I'm saying. That's exclusive.
This is the first interview with the new look.
Because it's been, what, about 2 weeks now?
Yeah. That was just a week. It was last Wednesday.
It was last Wednesday. Wow. Yeah.
Well, we love the new look.
Thank you.
And Larry and I have always been so impressed with how you've not only been the corporate face of the Houston Land Bank, but you're very visible and active in the community. So you're also the civic face of the Houston Land Bank as well. So, Christa, could you, for the members of our audience that aren't as familiar with the work and the programs that you guys are having over at the Houston Land Bank, could you just introduce the Houston Land Bank to our audience and talk about what it is foundationally that you all do at that organization?
Absolutely. So the Houston Land Bank is Houston's only organization that is both government and 501c3 that serves community development needs in our neighborhoods, specifically in historically disinvested neighborhoods. And I don't like to say underserved or underrepresented because they're very much representative and they're very much lots of services available here in the city. The problem is that they haven't been equitably distributed in certain neighborhoods, specifically the Black and Brown neighborhoods. So this organization was first created as a program that was housed within the city of Houston back in the late 90s called LAURA, which stood for the Land Assemblies Redevelopment Authority, and then branched off as a separate entity in 2018 in order to really have more capacity and dedicated oversight to still meet the needs of community development. But it also expanded our mission to say that we can also impact green space, we can impact flood resiliency, climate change, economic development, just whatever is needed in terms of a real estate development solution, whether it's a policy or a program or a physical, tangible project. We were created in order to lead in that space, but also to help open up more doors and pathways for our partners because we can't do this alone.
Thank you so much for sharing, Christa, because there are so many members of our audience that may have heard the Houston Land Bank, but didn't have a face to put with the organization and definitely didn't have someone on the inside like yourself to just lay out foundationally what it is you guys have as a mission. Now, the thing that I was most impressed with when I did my research and looked into the Houston Land Bank is that you work with members of the real estate community that runs the gamut, not just home buyers, but also home builders, developers. So for those that have a surface understanding of the types of programs that you guys have at the Houston Land Bank, could you just talk a little bit about what you all do for those that are in the market to buy a new home?
Absolutely. And also wanted to add that we also have maybe about 50 plus vendors outside of who you named, because we have external, right? We have external legal counsel. We have our environmental specialists and consultants. We have people that specialize in performa analysis and design and construction and cost estimation, basically all the different steps needed in order to activate the land is an extension of our team. And then the main staff members help to manage those consultants and, of course, kind of serve as a liaison to connect the dots of whatever is needed for that specific site. But in terms of how we help homeowners, we have two different programs of how that's served currently. One is we work with our pool of different builders and developers. I'll say that there's maybe 30, 35 of them. Don't quote me on that, but there's a host of them that work with us throughout the city. And how we work to make sure that we're producing affordable housing is we sell our land to them below market, so we can in turn pass that subsidy on to the home buyer. So since we're giving a discount in a sense, they're able to not charge as much, but still retain some form of a profit, so they can in turn produce an affordable home for an income eligible home buyer. That's one lane. Mm-hmm. The other track that we have is in partnership with the city of Houston, to where they have their own builders that they work with. They construct on our land and they pay us back for the land value, and we sell the home on their behalf. So in a sense, we're their real estate broker. And that's also sold to an affordable housing home buyer. Mm-hmm.
You know, right now, especially on the side of the table that Larry and I myself sit on, the buzzword has been interest rates, interest rates, interest rates. And that has put a lot of potential home buyers and homeowners in a position where they felt as if they were trapped in the rental cycle. Yes. Could you just, for those that may not understand the true value and what you all provide for home buyers, could you just give them a rough example on how you put, like you say, income eligible families in a position to buy homes in the city of Houston today, even if they think they may not be in a position to close on a home at today's values?
Yes. So first, I'll say that when it comes to barriers, yes, interest rates are one of them, but I also think it's a mindset. Because
thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah, because I think, you know, as much as people are talking about interest rates, there's nowhere near where interest rates are normally at. And people have become accustomed to this special circumstance and time that we've had. And, you know, we've gotten kind of spoiled. But in terms of interest rates, in terms of the bigger picture, it's actually not, it's maybe not even half of what it normally has been back, you know, 20 something years ago. And I think the market is balancing out to what is quote unquote normal, and people aren't sure how to respond. But in terms of how we work with the home buyer, once again, we sell the land at a discount. So instead of a lot that's worth probably $100,000, right, we are selling it for maybe 15, because that way the builder can focus on the, you know, construction costs and what they do best, and we can provide some relief. Now, I'll say that that's helpful, but there's still additional support that we're working on that we can provide to our partners, because it is about helping that home buyer. So sometimes there may be some additional support that's provided. Of course, you know, the home buyer has to go through that track, whether it's down payment assistance. But I'll also say that one of the things that I am very passionate about is also trying to find more relief for our builders, to where we can help provide some assistance, whether it's providing some floor plans that are already drawn up and already permitted, that can save them time and that can save them some money. I'm also looking into solutions where I can help them with some of the infrastructure support needed. So basically the pre-development components that can also help buy down the cost. Now, of course, you know, the banking community, financial institutions, there are some products available there that can help support with the interest rate, or with closing costs, or down payment assistance, or PMI. You know, you really got to do your research. And I would recommend connecting with the housing counselor that can walk you through your options, because there's so many options and ways that you can overlay different support systems. But in terms of what we're seeking to do here is, how do we support our builders so we can bring down the construction price, but they can still feed their families as well?
No, and that's super powerful, because that's a natural segue to talk about some of the things that you do with aspiring developers and home builders. So from that standpoint, everything you laid out is just, it seems miraculous for someone that owns a small business and wants to serve the community. And like you say, give back to some of the areas where they may have been raised, where they may have family. How does one that's an aspiring builder or a current builder, how do they become a part of your network to
Yes.
be a part of that pool of those with like mind to work with the Houston Land Bank?
Absolutely. So I will say, in terms of accessing our programming, you do have to have some level of previous experience. We have about 6 categories of types of builders and developers that we work with. One of them is a rehabilitation component if we find some products that need to be rehabilitated. Then we also have a commercial track if we find a property that also needs to have some commercial components there. We have a startup model, which means that you have built at least 2 homes prior to working with us. And then we have more an established track, which means that I believe you've done at least 5 and you're able to access and have the capacity to execute about 10 homes at the same time. And then we have what's called a master developer route, which means that you have the capacity and the expertise to execute about 25 lots simultaneously. So we look at the different tiers of what capacity could be for the business, and then try to provide that pathway of how they can execute, because we want to be sure that they are successful. Don't just apply for properties just to have them and sit on them, and now you're paying property tax on them and you're not providing the end product for the home buyer. But I'll say that we do seek to provide the different pathways of how we can scale up the portfolio for small businesses so they can move up the ladder into the master developer tract. And I would also say one other program that has not been launched, is not even finished in the forming of the design of the program, but we are partnering with LISC Houston. The Local Initiative Support Corporation is what it's called, which is a national nonprofit, and CDFI, a community development financial institution, in addition to the Community Land Trust and Fifth Ward Community Redevelopment Corporation, in order to create a Black women's developer program. So that is something that we're in the research and design phase of, like, what does this program look like? Who is it tailored to? Is it for residential or commercial? Is it both? Is it entry level? Is it experience? Is it both? Like just those different questions that we need to form through. But that is another program that's on the way, hopefully to launch sometime next year, so we can also provide more doors and intentional investment back into the ecosystem of community development.
And thank you so much for sharing, because this is the part of the interview, Christa, where I urge everyone in the audience to follow not only the Houston Land Bank on Instagram, so you can stay tapped in and know when these programs are online, but to also follow you on Instagram as well. So could you share those handles with our audience so that they can become a part of the know when it comes to all the news and updates with the Houston Land Bank?
Sure. So the Instagram for the land bank is HTX Land Bank, I believe. I'm pretty sure.
You're correct. Yes, ma'am.
I'm pretty sure that's it.
You're correct. Yes,
Mine
ma'am.
is my name, just Christa Stoneham.
As I dove into doing research about the Houston Land Bank and familiarizing myself with the programs, one of the things that even I, as a realtor in the city of Houston, who's had some experience with the Houston Land Bank, been to some of you guys' programs and heard people speak, one of the things that I didn't really notice is that you allow investors to partner with the Houston Land Bank, and you also accept charitable donations of land, real estate, and there are also people who sell properties to the Houston Land Bank. So for people like myself that didn't understand that you guys had that arm of the organization, could you just give a brief summary of how that works and how people could benefit from working with or partnering with the Houston Land Bank?
Sure. Well, since we are a 501c3, yes, we can accept donations monetarily or in land, or if there's something negotiated in terms of the market price is 100,000. You sell it to us. I'm gonna make up for 30. Then you could potentially write off that additional 70 as a tax donation or a benefit. Especially this time of the year and people trying to get their taxes in order and may need to spend some extra money with the 501c3. Holla at your girl. Yeah, I mean, we're also building other models of how there can be more of a formalized investment model, especially as we're ramping up our large tract division. Our largest contiguous acreage site is about 6 acres. And that is something a little bit new for the organization because traditionally we focused on more of a scattered site model where, it's lot, 2 homes, another lot, just kind of filling in these little blank spaces along the block, which we still have, but I'm also trying to really hone in and provide more of a master developer lane to where we can help lead the replat process, right? So we can sell you the land with the plan so you can expedite your work faster.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The cool thing about having the opportunity to interview you is because I've watched you work from afar. We know friends of a friend, colleagues of a colleague. And one of the things about your career that I think is underrepresented is the evolutionary process. One of the luxuries that Larry and I have with this platform is that we have the opportunity to interview industry leaders on a weekly basis. So when you're out and about and introducing yourself because you're the CEO, you're the president of the Houston Land Bank, how often do people ask you about your career prior to taking on this leadership role? And for our audience, could you just share a little bit about what you did before taking on the responsibilities of leading the Houston Land Bank and the evolutionary professional path that you've had to walk to be who you are today?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I I feel like that isn't asked of me often.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. I feel like I'm thinking about it. Sometimes they're like, well, how did you get this role? Like, what? And not in an offensive way, but I'm like, well, I'm qualified. Because I'm qualified. Yeah. But the evolution of Krista, I mean, you just heard I just switched my hair last week. So, that was the evolution of my hair. But so before this role, I served on the board for 2 years. I was the ex officio director, which means that I represented the city of Houston on the board. So that was kind of like my behind the scenes look. But let me tell you, it has nowhere near where it's like as a staff member to actually get in the weeds and really starting to see more of the day-to-day operations. But before this, Larry kind of spoke to it a little bit. I served with the city of Houston for almost 10 years. I started in the development regulations side. So I was in the planning and development department where I reviewed subdivision plats and chapter 42 ordinance on compliance of land, subdivision and different components of how you activate the land because you can't build on it until your land is compliant first. So I started there, made, a lot of presentations to the Houston Planning Commission and some of the different projects that I reviewed, such as East River or the Whole Foods that's in Midtown. Like some of the bigger projects were kind of like my area of expertise. And then it was about maybe 5 years after that when I started hearing about this initiative that was coming called Complete Communities, which is Mayor Turner's signature initiative in order to invest in underserved areas of Houston. And I just kind of volunteered to say that I want to be a part of this because my background's in architecture and community development. And that's what Larry was talking about back here is the degrees, not plaques, degrees. I'm just teasing. And I really wanted to get back into connecting more with people. The regulation and policy side is important, but I wanted to be sure that I'm able to talk to people directly. So I volunteered to be a part of that. And I was assigned Acres Home as the community. So there were 5 at the time. Yes. And now there are 10. So Acres Home was the first complete community. So I was the first complete communities planner.
Mhm.
And, we really started grassroots style, talking to the neighbors about what they wanted to see, what the challenges were, just really being better educated of what is the current conditions of Acres Home, but most importantly, what do you foresee for it? And
Right.
and I'm not going to tell you my expertise. I need you to tell me your lived experience so I can interpret it and to create an action plan to move forward. And the culmination of that process was creating action plans for each of the neighborhoods that were tailored for each of them. And then I transitioned into the implementation of them, and I moved to the mayor's office and helped to form the what's now called the Mayor's Office of Complete Communities, in order to track the progress of the projects that the community outlined, to help fundraise for them, to help work with partners on, whether it's the nonprofit, public, or private side, on their different calls to action, because the action plans talked about housing, it talked about infrastructure needs, health, parks and green space, civic engagement, basically all aspects of quality of life. So it was my job to help assemble everyone needed to get that particular project or program done. And really, as I was, ramping things up there, I raised like $30 million. I helped to oversee like literally thousands of projects by coordinating with the city departments and, like I said, our partners on the philanthropic or private side. And I really wanted to be more efficient, just to be quite frank, on getting it done, because it's great to be a convener and to facilitate things, but the city only had so much capacity on what you can execute, because the city is limited on what they're able to directly impact. And I wanted to be an implementer. And I just said, I really have been kind of behind the scenes and behind the curtain of a lot of things where my name hasn't been named. And that was perfectly fine with me. But I knew that I was being called to something bigger in order to really amplify my voice for those that needed it. And that's when I decided to, put my name in the hat for this role. And I've been here for almost 2 years now, and I'm proud to say that we have really shifted things in the 2 years that I've been here to amplify what we've been doing. And I'm also the youngest one in the country to serve in this role. So definitely this has been an evolution of me just walking into the light that was already inside of me and being able to really connect with those that need to understand the ramifications of real estate and the history of what was, but how can we empower each other in order to make a solution for tomorrow while still passing down the torch to somebody else, because there's only so much we can do in our allotted time here on this earth. So the evolution of my career has also been the evolution of my personal development.
First things first, I want to thank you personally as a proud graduate of Dwight D. Eisenhower High School on the north side of Acres Home. I want to thank you for all of the hard work and perseverance and your talents that you've put into the developing of our neighborhood, because there's been so many great changes. And if I had known you were the lady behind all of that, we'd have had you on the show a long time ago. So that I wanted to make sure I gave you those flowers publicly. I want to make sure that we don't gloss over all the accolades and successes that you talked about during your career leading up to the CEO and president position that you currently hold. When you think back, and this could be from childhood or just professionally, is there anyone that you could credit as serving as like a mentor or an inspiration? Because I think a lot of times when people meet you, Christa, the reason they ask you about your background is because there are so few mentors that are visible to lead young ladies down the path that you're on, even if that's something that they have as a future goal. So when you think about your past, is there anyone that you could publicly credit? It could be members of your family, close inner circle, members of a church, that you think or that you could publicly credit as far as helping you get on the path to becoming Miss Christa Stoneham, CEO and president?
I will say I was I think indirectly influenced. I wouldn't say that like they sat down and talked to me and I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. But when I think about my childhood and as I reflect back and like I talked to my grandmother, I really kind of, well, it really resonated once I reflected more on it's real estate has always been around me. I just didn't necessarily see it in that way because I was just looking at the family and family business. So my grandfather, who actually was born in Third Ward, and I didn't even know that until later. And when I moved here, because I'm originally from California, from the Oakland, San Francisco area, and he moved to San Francisco, opened up a dental practice. So he was the first Black dentist in San Francisco and bought a whole bunch of different real estate investment properties throughout San Francisco and Oakland and turned them into rental properties for families in need, some of those being my family members. But basically just seeing, I remember like being like 6 maybe years old because I would go to his dental office to clean my teeth and then sometimes go in the back office just to play or whatever as my mom is getting her teeth cleaned, and there would be these blueprints there and I would always like open them up and look at them, and I didn't know really what I was looking at, but it was always intriguing to me to see these different plans on pieces of paper, not knowing, circa 20 years later that I would be drawing these. So that was definitely, I think, an indirect influence. And even though he passed away when I was about 10, when I tell my grandmother now, who's 92, about the different stuff I'm doing or I'm working on, she's like, that's exactly what your grandfather would talk about. Like these different ideas and visions that I had about converting an old school. So Bethune Academy, turning that into what's now the Bethune Empowerment Center. Like that was my vision when I was at the city, right? And being able to think about how can this abandoned space at the time be revitalized into an asset for the neighborhood, and what programs do they need for workforce or entrepreneurship training and development, right? So just how you can make lemonade out of lemons, right? And be able to problem solve is, I think, something that was in my blood and didn't really know it until I started walking into it. But as I started walking, I started meeting different people along the way that helped to confirm that I'm on the right path, but also that there can be so much more than what you're even imagining. So, for example, one of those people I'd also say is Kathy Flanagan Payton, who is the president and CEO of the Fifth Ward CRC. I remember meeting her when I was in grad school back in, 2012, I think. And I was at a conference and I heard her speak on how she was building plans and revitalizing Fifth Ward. And I was like, wow, I really appreciate how you can have a vision and then touch that tangible result. And that's when I think I really shifted from thinking of architecture as just designing blueprints and lines on a piece of paper. I saw it as a system to where I can design how to help someone regardless of what family size they're in or ethnicity. Like you can really tailor and design a solution for that family type depending on whatever program or policy, and tailoring it to them to make sure that they succeed. But also you need to think bigger than just this one house. It's a bigger system that needs to be impacted from where this house sits, right? Or how it's able to access the climate for that house. Like, how are they interacting with their neighbors? Where do they go to play? Where do they go to work? Where do they go to sleep, right? Where do people go to connect? So really thinking about the human element of real estate has been an evolution of time as I've met different humans that have shown me, like, this is how I live, this is how I work, this is how I play.
I was so impressed last time I was driving up Victory and drove past what formerly used to be known as Bethune Academy. But I had no idea the purpose of the renovation and the change. I want to invite everyone like myself who attended Mary McLeod Bethune Academy back in the day, take a trip up Victory and look and see all of the great work that Ms. Stoneham and her associates have done. It's just amazing. I want to thank you so much for sitting in because you've enlightened me about things about my neighborhood that I had totally glossed over or just totally looked past. And as someone who went to that school and remembered when it was closed and there was nothing going on over there, I had no idea that it was people like you that saw my old school and saw value in what not only it could bring to the community, but how it could just get that area of victory back going and teaming with activity and positivity. So that is great work. I want to ask you this too, Christa, because you guys at the Houston Land Bank have so many great programs, you're really active civically. For those members of our audience that are hearing you for the first time, that's being introduced to the Houston Land Bank, when will be their next opportunity to meet, greet, and interact with you on a personal level, Christa?
I don't know yet. I haven't been outside. Not recently. I've kind of seriously, I've kind of intentionally like slowed down, going to the different networking things and speaking engagements, just because I want to be sure I'm finishing this year strong with the projects that we have. We got a lot of contracts that are being reviewed and partnership deals. So right now it's kind of tying up some loose ends. But I will say, for sure, just follow me on either LinkedIn or Instagram. It's probably where I'm most active. But I believe for sure, January, like we literally have an event locked in for January. We're talking about February, March, April. Like it's going to be a whole calendar of events, and we're finalizing some things to where we can publicly post this calendar so then people know how to get engaged with our bigger community.
Hey man, once again, I invite everybody tap in, follow Miss Stoneham on IG and LinkedIn, because it sounds like the first quarter of 2024 is going to be a vibe with the Houston Land Bank, and they're going to definitely be active out here.
It off like pow, pow, pow. Yeah.
Look, Larry and I both thank you so much. This is something that I think is long overdue as far as giving you and the Houston Land Bank opportunity to speak about your programs on our platform. I know how busy it is on Thursdays. I thank you so much for your time. If there's anything that's coming up as far as event, news, or something that you would like us to get out to our audience, please do not hesitate. You have a seat with Larry and myself anytime. Christa, man, thank you so much, Queen, for sitting in with us and educating us all. And until next time, thank you so much and be blessed.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all.
Man, great interview. Big, huge shout out to the Texas Real Estate King, Mr. Larry W. Brooks, man, for making that happen for us. I urge everyone in the audience, follow, like, subscribe, interact, get involved. The things that they're doing over at the Houston Land Bank are generational wealth changers. Get involved, change your life, change someone else's life. Let's share this episode and make sure that everyone who has an interest in buying a home, selling property, building on land, or acquiring land has the opportunity to not only hear this interview, but to know and interact with Miss Christa Stoneham. So on behalf of myself, Ric Davis, and the Texas Real Estate King, Mr. Larry W. Brooks, I thank everyone in the Prime Real Estate Network audience for tuning in this week. And until next Thursday, we're only a text, email, DM, or inbox message away. So until next week at this same time, everyone in the audience, we urge you all to be safe and to be blessed.